Hi, my name is Ian Kinder. Welcome to the Live Safe Academy show. Today we're going to talk about low light shooting, how to incorporate the use of a flashlight, and how to use the flashlight as an impact weapon. And this is going to be a class taught by two people, myself and Lou Chiodo, one of the few men that I call teacher. If you feel that this show is helpful, you can help us help you with two very simple steps. If you're watching this on YouTube, like our video, subscribe to our channel, share the video with other people. If you're listening to this on our podcast, share the podcast with other people and then subscribe to our podcast. And then go to livesafeacademy.com/connect, where you'll have access to all of our podcasts, our videos, our articles, our in-person classes in the Detroit, Michigan area, and our live virtual classes that you can participate from anywhere in the world with instructors like Lou Chiodo, the gentleman that I'm about to introduce right now. Lou's got an extensive background in dealing with working in a low light environment because he worked a grave night shift for many years as a trooper right on the Mexican border. So Lou, can you give us a little bit about your background in general and then talk specifically about your experiencing dealing with low light scenarios?
Sure. Well, good morning, Ian, to anyone that's viewing our presentation this morning. What I think is probably really important about my background in the use of our firearms in low light conditions of actually pure darkness at times, is I worked graveyard for 23 years. And what I found is that one of the weaknesses in the training of not only people but programs that they're in is the proper use of one, how do we shoot well when we're in diminished light conditions where all we have is the lighting that is available to us. And in addition to that, if we have to integrate a flashlight into what we're doing as far as either searching or having to use it to identify threats, things of that nature, I found that there was a lot of real significant problems in the way that people are either trained to do this or maybe even worse, have no training at all in doing it and just basically picking up a flashlight and kind of come as you are as far as how they use it. My company, Gunfighters Limited, we basically specialize in close quartered shooting. We do the whole spectrum of shooting, but we try to spend a lot of time teaching and professing techniques that work for low light shooting and for close quartered shooting, because the two of them kind of marry together. And that's what we'll be presenting in this program that we're discussing today. It's going to be the integration of low light shooting, and then also when we integrate artificial light from our flashlights, how do we do that efficiently and appropriately, and probably more importantly, safely? Because one of the things that I found working out in the field, and we work the spectrum there on graveyard. It's everything from how do you manage light, making traffic stops? How do you manage light if you're doing a search of a house or a building? How do you manage your lighting when you're out there in the woods having to, let's say, track down someone that fled into the woods off either traffic stop or whatever other endeavor that you were involved in? And you find out a lot, having just been in that environment, how managing light can become a very critical thing, because it can be very unsafe if you're not doing it correctly. Whether it's giving up your position, whether it's backlighting someone else, using it inappropriately, being out in the open, just searching with the light on continually. All these things can lead to people getting hurt or killed, because if there is an actual threat, that could cause you significant problems. Everything works so long as no one's trying to shoot you or kill you. And what we intend to do in this program is teach part of the programs that we do for what we call target focused shooting, to where when you're in low light conditions or you're in close quartered conditions, you're able to view the target as the threat that it is and be able to address it in a manner that is going to be consistent with that environment that you're working in. because some methodologies of shooting work well there and then others don't. And we don't want to confuse the two issues.
So there's a lot to talk about with this workshop, and all the information for anybody who wants to participate is going to be in the show notes of this video or in this podcast. But this is not like watching a YouTube video where the information is passive. This is where they're going to be able to interact with both you and me, where they're going to be able to ask questions just like they would if we were in a traditional in-person class where everybody was sitting in the same room. But the other thing is there's going to be guided physical practice, both for your portion and for my portion, where we're going to be guiding them through physical skills. So they're actually practicing the skills and developing the skills properly under our supervision. That's a really big deal. And this isn't just for people that carry guns for personal defense. This is for people that work with guns, either because they're in law enforcement or in the military, they're in private security, they're in corrections. If you depend on a gun or the use of a flashlight in low light scenarios, this is going to be a class for you. And again, the nice thing is you can participate from anywhere in the world, right from the convenience of your own home or workplace. So Lou, I think that's really important. And your experience with this is really important, because there's a lot of things that you might see on YouTube videos that looks great, but until you're in the environment and actually having to use the information, you really don't know what's going to be advantageous, what's not going to work well, what's actually going to be more harmful than helpful, or what isn't even possible in the first place. Because a lot of things that are taught, they look great on paper, but they don't work real under real conditions. Many years ago when I was a kid, I saw a Garfield commercial, comic, where he took a piece of bread, he put some butter on it, he put some cinnamon on it, then he put it in the toaster, and the toaster shorted out. So it worked on paper. He's trying to make cinnamon toast. But of course, we know that's not how it actually works. You got to toast, then you got to add the butter and the cinnamon. The point being is that if you're not the one actually doing it, what looks good may actually be bad. If you don't have the experience to sort that out, you could be setting yourself up to fail instead of succeeding. And by having a chance to take the class and interact with the instructors, people can ask questions so that they truly understand what's being taught. And if they have any questions, they can ask that, they can sort it out. Again, it's not passive learning, it's interactive, active learning. I think that's a big difference.
Well, I agree. And, we just completed a entire block of training where we did a virtual class where I taught our STEP process, which is how we teach people to integrate target focused shooting into their fighting platform, or what some people call stance. And we were doing extensive drilling within that, where I'm basically supervising what they're doing and running them through the drills, so that not only for the purposes of the class, but later on, they have an actual structured way to be able to practice these skills. It can be done dry firing in their house. It could be probably to a lesser extent on ranges, because the problem that we have with low light shooting training in the first place is that many of the people never really get a chance to do that live fire. Because if they're using civilian ranges, there's no range that I know of that I've ever been on that's run in a civilian capacity that's either turning the lights down or turning them completely off, which is what we do when we're in a controlled environment where we teach this, to where they can utilize their firearm, utilize their flashlight, or just utilize plain target focused shooting in dim light conditions, because the facility that they're working at just doesn't allow it. So we're going to profess being able to use airsoft equipment during this program. Reason being, just what I do, about 10 feet from where I'm sitting right now, I can open a door, go in my garage, have the lights off in the garage, and practice everything I teach. I can practice all this low light conditions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anytime I want it, by going in there. And the neat part about this is, once you learn target focused shooting for that close quartered environment, and you marry that with proper flashlight technique, you're basically being able to operate in almost any environment that you find yourself in and do it effectively. And this is what we're trying to do in this program, is give someone tools to use, so that in the environments where they're going to have to do this are usually going to be all close quarter. they may never have a chance to get a flashlight involved in it. This is why we've integrated teaching target focused shooting in the program that we're going to put on, because if they're left with that, that's what they're going to fight with. But if they already have a flashlight in their hand and they're able to use it to illuminate the area, then that will be a way of them giving themselves a better chance of being accurate, a better chance of identifying the threat. Because one of the things that we emphasize is that you never pull the trigger unless you know who you're pulling the trigger on. We don't like mistaken identity shootings because we don't want to shoot family members or people that, really aren't combatants. They're not there to do us any harm. So you have to learn both things. You have to learn target focused shooting, and you have to learn how to use your flashlight in conjunction with it. So, for the average person out here, and even in law enforcement, and a lot of times the guys don't get a lot of opportunities to do low light shooting. They barely sometimes get enough time to go out there during regular daylight hours or where there's good lighting and actually just do their qualification or whatever they're doing in their program. So I think this is a really good opportunity for anybody that want to kind of seal this loop of being better at close quartered shooting, but then also be able to operate in dim light, or what we would probably call no light conditions, where you absolutely have to utilize a flashlight. So I look forward to be able to presenting this to everybody. We would encourage anybody coming into the program, if they can, if where they are, they can utilize airsoft equipment in doing this, it would be very beneficial to them, because the drilling that we're going to do with this will be very beneficial for them to have an airsoft or one of these CERT systems, something that they can use to actually know where their shot went. We can do a dry fire, and we've developed, just like we did in the other class that we ran, how we can do this dry fire, but it'd be really nice for them to have an airsoft or a CERT type of system, but not necessarily have to have it.
Well, and you said a lot too, because not only are we dealing with three distinct topics that all integrate to each other, but we're also teaching people how to learn how to train on their own without being dependent on going to a range, which is particularly important when you have things like shutdowns or lockdowns. But it's also important when ammo is so expensive that people either can't get it or they don't want to shoot it because they want to hold on to it. Well, now you can learn how to train from your home. You're not dependent on the ranges without the need for using ammo, because airsoft equipment is still plentiful and it's pennies on the dollar compared to live fire. And the big thing there that you also mentioned is, whether it's law enforcement, military, whether it's the public or corrections, whatever, most people don't have the opportunity to shoot in low light conditions. But you can, with airsoft, create the opportunity to shoot in low light and develop those fundamental skills, so that when you put a real gun in your hand, you already have the skills developed. And I think that's really important. And a big part of all these classes is you're learning two things. You're learning what to do, but you're also sorting through all the things not to do. Because again, if you just go on YouTube and you start searching videos, there can be some really good information out there, but there can also be a lot of bad information. And for people who don't have the experience, they don't necessarily know how to sort this stuff out. But if they had the chance to learn from somebody who has real world field experience like you do, who worked a graveyard shift for their entire career, well, now they're learning from somebody who knows, because you've been there and done that literally countless times, more than most people even in your field, because your entire career was in the field and in graveyard. So they're getting a chance to learn from somebody who actually knows, and they had that ability to interact and ask questions. So that's such an extremely valuable asset. I'm so glad that we can bring this to people. And if you want to, if you have any passing thoughts on what you want to mention about your course, and then I'll give people kind of a brief overview of what I'm going to cover in my section too.
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the primary things that we would start with is we have to develop a fighting platform, and we'll cover that in detail when we get there. So it is a position that we use to maximize on balance, coordination, our ability to coordinate our handgun with our body. And it's very kind of one of those things that really has to be done properly so that you can maximize on your skill. because if you're off balance based on the way that you're presenting your body, whether you're fighting with your personal weapons, your hands, your feet, things of that nature, or fighting with your handgun or any other system, you need to have a platform that is solid enough to be able to maximize on your balance, your coordination, etc. Then we have to teach. Okay, once we have that sorted out, how are we going to manipulate or handle our weapon system so that in those close quartered environments, where whether we're in dim light, no light, regular light, it doesn't matter. We have to have a methodology of shooting that will work when we have all those forces of that sympathetic nervous system, which is our, survival mode that people go into, where all of a sudden you have major things happening with your body that don't normally happen. But we have to be able to use a shooting system that can override a lot of the things that happen to people when that happens. So that will be kind of like the shooting end of it, to where we will be shooting or teaching a method that will shoot in low light with. And then the integration of the flashlight is going to build upon that platform, because the way we teach it, that flashlight is going to get completely integrated with that platform. And once you marry those two things up, now you've been able to kind of work within any environment you're going to find yourself in, whether it's daytime, low light, or no light conditions, where you have to actually use that illumination to identify the threat and actually use that illumination to be able to engage them. That's a loop that has to be sealed. Because if you have if there's something weak about the way that your platform is, the way that you handle your handgun, frankly, in those close quartered events, most people aren't going to ever be able to use their sight systems, no matter what sight system they've got, whether it's night sights or anything else, because many times things are happening so fast that they're not even being able to use some of the training they may have been doing with that, because their training gets overridden by the reality of what they're facing. So you need to be able to have all of these things in place so that effectively fight when the moment occurs where you need it. And I think that's probably the most important thing about what we do. I know both you and your programs and what I teach is we're not teaching people nonsense. We're teaching people things that work in the field, that have demonstrated work in the field, not just nice to know things, or, gee, this is the newest trend in the handgun world, or newest trend in something. These are things that people go out and use in the real world. And I think that's what separates a lot of what we do from a lot of things that you see in other places. So I think that would probably be a summary of what I would intend to do in this program.
I think that's fantastic, Lou. I can't wait. And for my end of it, the way I look at things is, anytime you're involved in violence, it's like every fraction of a second you're rolling the dice, you're rolling the dice, you're rolling the dice. You can only roll those dice so many times before you get a number that you're not going to be happy with. So the goal in any violent situation is to stop those dice rolling, to shut down that threat as quickly, as aggressively, as decisively as you can, because the longer they're functional, the longer you're in danger, and the longer they're functional, the more danger you're in, because the more likely that the situation will escalate, the more likely that you'll become injured or exhausted. And I think that's really critical, because when you look at a lot of self-defense training, you see people spend a lot of time on skills that really don't change the equation, and in all reality are probably never going to happen anyways. What we need are skills that give us maximum potential to shut down the threat as quickly and as decisively as we can. And that's what I'm going to focus on in my portion. And what's important about this too is, I'm not just going to be teaching how to use a flashlight as an impact weapon. I'm going to be teaching how to use a knife or something as common as a pen as a sharp weapon. And the reason why I'm going to do that, the Marines, and I know you'll appreciate this, they have a saying, one mind, I believe it's any weapon or many weapons. But the idea is, back when I got involved with law enforcement training in the late 80s and early 90s, there's a real big problem in that, the DT instructors would teach, let's say, one stance as an example. The baton instructors might teach another stance. The shooting instructors would teach another stance. Pepper spray came around in the early 90s, and they would teach a whole nother stance for that. And that's just not how the brain works under stress. We need the fewest ways of doing the most things possible. So the way that you fight with a sharp weapon or an impact weapon is almost identical. The way you fight with a knife, a pen, a tactical flashlight is almost identical. So what I want to do is teach people how they can pick up any one of those weapon systems and use them as a close combat weapon. And this is important because most shootings start within 5 feet. Most of those start within 2 feet. Almost all gunfights start within 10 feet. I tell students, if you're in a gunfight at 21 feet, look up and step to the left because you're probably going to get hit by lightning. That's how statistically rare it is. So when we're up close and personal, whether there's guns involved or not, that doesn't mean the only thing we're going to be doing is shooting. We may be having to hit people or stab people using unarmed combat skills, because we have to react in the moment with the fastest options that we have that are most appropriate to the situation that we're in. So knowing how to use the flashlight as an impact weapon is really critical to that overall skill, that overall safety, not just using how to integrate it with the use of a gun. And this is also important because a flashlight, it's a utilitarian tool, right? You're going to need light a lot more often than you're going to need to shoot somebody or hit somebody. But by having that flashlight with you as a tool that you can use for light whenever you need it in any practical circumstance that you're in, you're also now having a weapon that you can use to protect your safety, both as an impact weapon and as something that you can integrate with shooting. But again, a lot of what's taught is self-defense. It's not really focused on skills that change the equation quickly. We need to really focus on those core skills that are going to give us the best chance of success to stop that person from hurting us as fast and as decisively as we can. And like I mentioned with your training, it's not just learning what to do, it's learning what not to do. And it's having the ability to interact with the instructor so that they can ask questions. And both of our sections in this program are going to involve guided skill practice. So it's not just going to be us explaining things to them. We're all going to be practicing the skills together where we can evaluate them and again, answer questions. It's an interactive learning process, just like you're there in person, but we could be across the planet. We're already starting to set up classes in the Philippines. We're looking at set up classes in Taiwan and many other places around the world where we can help people right from the convenience of their own living room without having the expense of traveling somewhere or bringing an instructor to them. And I'll tell you, Lou, when I went through your class and I trained with you many times, it was a phenomenal experience. And I learned things from going through that class, even though I've trained with you a lot. And other students who've been in there have trained with you in the past, and they said that they learned things that for them it was the first time that they were learning it. And we also had people in that class that didn't have a lot of experience, and they were getting a tremendous amount of value out of the class. So it doesn't matter if you have a lot of experience or a little bit of experience. What we're finding is that everybody is benefiting from these programs. And the neat thing is that when you're doing this type of a live interactive virtual format, you can really start to focus in on things that you might not spend as much time on if you're in person. And I think the reason why I learned things that I might not have picked up before is because we had time to focus on those aspects. And I think the reason why other people said the same thing, man, I've learned this stuff before, but in this class, I've picked up new things. It's because in this live interactive format, you're spending more time focusing on different things. And I really think people benefit a lot from that. So whether you have a little experience or a lot of experience, I think everybody is going to benefit from these programs. Lou, do you have any closing thoughts that you want to give?
Well, I would just say that I look forward to training with anybody that signs up for the program. And I think my goal is to give you the best that I can to help you stay safe and stay alive.
I agree 100%. That's my goal too. We would not offer these classes if we did not feel that they offer a tremendous value. And all the information to join that class is going to be in the show notes. If you like this video, please share with other people. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like this podcast, share with other people. Subscribe to our podcast. Then go to livesafeacademy.com/connect, where you have access to all of our podcasts, our videos, our articles, our in-person classes in the Detroit, Michigan area, and our live virtual classes that you can participate from anywhere in the world, including instructors like Chiodo, who's just a phenomenal trainer with so much real world experience, instructors who are so dedicated to help you and your family be safe. I'm so happy with these new experiences and opportunities that we can create for everybody. And guys, thank you so much for being a part of this show. I want everyone to have a great day and stay safe.